How do you run a tourist town when there are no tourists? That's a question we've had to ask ourselves throughout the last year, given the pandemic has largely kept travelers at home. Our small surf town strip, which is ready for the regular throughput of thousands of tourists every week, has been relatively silent for the last 15 months or so. Many local businesses have closed, some for good, leaving many people in the tourism and hospitality industries without work. Just like small businesses in our industry around the world, we have labored to keep afloat. But here's some good news. Some of us are making it through. A rural migration out of the cities has helped sustain local small businesses in town and even given birth to new ones. We are learning to track a way out of this pandemic by staying true to our values, among them designing enterprises with humans in mind. In the process of surviving, we are tuning into what I think is the future of travel destinations and the future of creative communities. Our generation and those younger than elder millennials like myself increasingly seek out the elusive authenticity in the world, and I don't believe that is changing anytime soon. In contrast with the manufactured and manicured nature of resort getaways, which are fun too, don't get me wrong, the character, detail, and conversationality of a small-town creative economy shines all the more. I'm sitting at the Great Northwest Travel Stop and Viewing Deck at the iconic Mona Lisa Point. The Point, as the surf community calls it, is an important spot in the Philippines' growing surf movement. Decades ago, the quality of the wave drew foreign surfers from countries like America, Australia, and Japan off the beaten path of their known surfing world closer to their homes. The Philippines then was a new frontier for surfing. Over time, a local culture developed around wave riding, and the Filipino surfer became a reality, a genre all their own. La Union is now home to the best surf athletes in the country, some of them champions and medalists in the most recent Southeast Asian Games in 2019, which was held at, you guessed it, this very spot, outside by the beach. What makes the La Union story and experience complete for visitors and residents alike isn't only surfing, but the kind of neighborhood it has created. One filled with creativity, verve, and entrepreneurial spirit. People care about design here, and they build their enterprises around culture. Over a decade ago, my friend Mia Sebastian and I joked that we would move to La Union and try to foster a community of hipsters eking out a living on alternative trades. In my mind back then, that looked like running a tiny coffee shop maybe, or maintaining charming accommodations for backpackers, teaching yoga or selling art, peddling vegan food, or getting dirty in organic farming. Maybe having one or two online side hustles to keep things interesting and make ends meet. I myself was a writer at the time, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could live like that in LU? Well, what started as a joke for us has since then become a well-entrenched reality here at the Great Northwest. In 2013, Mia and her partners pioneered Flotsam and Jetsam Hostel, informed by their years of backpacking. Meanwhile, my wife Amy and I pioneered El Union Coffee together with Mia and our partner Sly, a tiny coffee shop rooted in family values that I can expound upon later. In 2015, we started building the Great Northwest Travel Stop and Viewing Deck. Yes, it has a ridiculously long name, with its flagship tenant, El Union Coffee. Great Northwest would be design forward, environmentally conscious, and community-centric. It was a simple starting point for us, just those three values, and the right people in the mix. We built the place in the language of Philippine architecture, with the Bahay Kubo as inspiration. The bones of the place include found pieces from dismantled northern Philippine houses, like hardwood posts or hardwood cladding for houses. Our roofs are made of anahaw and bamboo, as you can see above me. It's the work of craftsmen from neighboring Bacnotan town. Unlike metal and concrete, bamboo and anahaw are renewable and grow locally, reducing carbon footprints and the amount of travel that the materials need to make. It grows on trees, quite literally. People always ask us about our roofs and if they work. The answer is obvious. Of course they work. They're 6 years old by now. But not just that, tropical folk have used those roofs for literally ages. We aren't the first to use them, but there seems to be a preconception in society that design means new. But sometimes looking backwards gives us hints at what doesn't need to change, but can be repurposed, evolved, even iterated upon for future projects. We have found renewable materials to be quite effective during storms. Bamboo is known for its tensile strength and flex, and anahaw can keep you just as dry as a tin roof when done well. It also keeps you cool when done properly. It sounds much better acoustically. If you care about the acoustics of a restaurant, you will notice that Great Northwest has a warmth that you won't find in shopping malls or hotels predominantly made of glass, metal, and concrete. The human ear has evolved around organic materials for millions of years. So it's no surprise that we would like how things like wood, anahaw, and bamboo sound and feel in a space. They feel like home, and we are at home in their midst. My business partner Mia, a designer by trade, was traveling in the USA at the time we were building Great Northwest. She snapped a photo of a clapboard wall in the Hamptons and said, "Show this to Manong Mar." She sent that to me on WhatsApp. Manong Mar was our foreman at the time, and I laughed at the idea of exporting an idea that Mia saw in the Hamptons and interpreting that in a Bahay Kubo. But it worked. Manong Mar and his team made planks from fiber cement boards, and we affectionately now refer to that style as Kubo X Hamptons, which is a funny joke that we make, but it's true. That's kind of what it looks like. Another feature we built into Great Northwest is a gray water filtration system. Because we surf at the point, we care about the quality of the water in our ocean. And so one feature of the property is that water used for hand washing and dishwashing in all of our food and beverages establishments gets routed through our filtration system downstairs, where it is repurposed for toilet flushing and gardening. It is clean and safe for such purposes, and we use less water as a result. Lastly, we largely opted out of air-conditioned spaces on the property. Not only does air conditioning increase the carbon production and resource consumption of a place, but passive cooling and fresh airflow design may very well be the most relevant design feature in a world experiencing a pandemic due to an airborne illness. If we were designed like a typical hotel building or shopping mall, we simply wouldn't have been able to safely entertain a healthy number of guests over the last year. We have made mistakes in design too, but that is all part of the process. Mistakes learned from result in iteration and maybe even innovation. As mentioned earlier, design doesn't stand still. Like a person, it ages, it learns, it evolves, it finds its voice and identity, and cascades those learnings, influencing the next version, iteration, or in human terms, the next generation. Speaking of human terms, a bit about our other company, El Union Coffee. El Union Coffee is the first and flagship tenant at the Great Northwest. We began in 2013 down the road in a small bigasan or rice shop. It predates the Great Northwest. El Union was originally the size of a parking space, but we soon outgrew it, given it could only seat 6 people. It was in 2015 that we moved to Great Northwest's original building, where the coffee shop still operates. The El Union side of the journey speaks of social design, an important term for us, the idea that human life and experience should be the center of an enterprise. El Union Coffee was organically designed around family decisions about how we would spend our day. The most notable feature was a schedule allowing us to be at the beach with the kids daily while having no household help and being the main baristas and cooks. Compound that intention over 8 years and expand those values across a team of 30-odd individuals who have passed through or still work at our organization, and you have what I guess you could call a corporate culture and organizational design. Pre-pandemic, our staff already worked less hours than many F&B counterparts in town, around 25% less time for equal or greater pay. And yet our cafe has typically been efficient, able to serve over 1,000 customers a day while we are allowed to surf, have fun at the beach, even have side hustles. We define our own values above and beyond minimum wage and time requirements mandated by government, and thus create workplace solutions that are tailor-fit to our own terms, not just as owners, but as an entire team of individuals. Pre-pandemic, our staff already worked less hours than many F&B counterparts in town, around 25% less time, which might raise questions about productivity. Yet our cafe system has typically been efficient, able to serve over 1,000 customers a day quite regularly. We define our own values above and beyond minimum wage and time requirements mandated by government, and thus create workplace solutions that are tailor-fit to our own terms, not just as owners, but as an entire team that includes baristas, barbacks, line cooks, and an office team. Whereas a typical barista tenureship is about 14 months, we have team members who have remained with us for double or triple that time before moving on to other career opportunities. Even our company alumni are founders of our competing coffee bars in town, and that makes us proud. A rising tide floats all boats, and Surftown is a fleet of unique ocean vessels. During the pandemic, we wanted to make it through without having to downsize, so we created an 18-month plan from March 2020 to Jan 2022 and divided that time frame into 6-month renewable periods with the following features. Universal basic income for all. This meant that managers, founders, and line cooks would all make the same amount of money until October 2020. After all, basic human needs generally cost the same regardless of socioeconomic class. We would then reevaluate transparently with our team how we would move after that first 6-month period. We allotted a budget for those with special needs, like housing assistance for those renting and not living with family, or transport assistance for those living in far-flung areas. This included acquiring vehicles for some of them, like scooters, because the cost of public transport had either gone up or jeeps were not working. We put a portion of our monthly income toward a medical fund in case anyone were to get sick, and that medical fund still continues to operate now. We instituted an open book management system where all of our staff could access our financial position to ensure transparency, accountability, and that a provisionary wage reduction was merited at all times. Lastly, and probably my favorite feature of our survival plan was this: sticking by our most important suppliers, the coffee farmers from whom we buy the bulk of our local coffee stock. The lockdowns came as the Philippine coffee growing community wrapped up the 2019 to 2020 harvest season. Our friends in the Cordilleras nearby, the Kapitaco collective of coffee producers, contacted us about buying from their fresh harvest of export quality specialty coffees. We've been supporting each other through the years, but 2020 was a bad year to build inventory. A smart business should try to liquidate inventory and not bank it. It should try and hold on to cash and not stock. But what to do with all these great coffees being offered to us? How could we stand with our farmers? With challenges in logistics, buying coffee from just a few towns away made more sense than ever. But how would we sell it when the cafe was closed? The answer was again in design. We would build an online store and design a line of whole coffee beans, a new line of business for us. And so at the height of the enhanced community quarantine period in the Philippines, we landed more than a ton of homegrown specialty coffee at our roasting facility that had remained largely dormant throughout the lockdowns. We got to work and created a beautiful coffee packaging design system in collaboration with Artifact Studio, inspired by Philippine grocery store nostalgia, surf and skateboard culture combined. A website created by a local designer named Casfade. You can look him up on Instagram. A reorganization of our team from bar and kitchen work to online customer service and fulfillment. Since we began the online store, we have shipped thousands of packages of ethically sourced, directly traded Filipino coffee around the country. We have launched what is, to our knowledge, the first LU-grown and roasted specialty coffee. And we have positioned that coffee alongside bespoke, locally made ceramic drinkware and other El Union merchandise like clothing available on elunioncoffee.com, which ships nationwide and has a goal of global fulfillment one day. As travel begins to open up again with the rollout of vaccines, our cafe is beginning to see tourist foot traffic again. But we came back to life without tourist foot traffic at the height of the pandemic thanks to circular thinking, thanks to neighborhood thinking. We thought first about those closest to home. Through design and futures thinking, we have created a new branch of our business, a web store that is here to stay even beyond the pandemic. The reason that I mention all of these is to illustrate that design is not a static process, but rather it is dynamic. It rolls with the punches. It is living and an unfolding process. Design that works, at least for us, is rooted in human experience as the beginning and end of the process. We have learned that it is rooted in home and neighborhood. The reason that I mention all of these things is to illustrate that design is not a static process, at least not for us, but it is dynamic, living, and unfolding. Design that works is rooted in human experience as the beginning and end of the process. It is rooted in home, in neighborhood. Even the production team shooting our series of non-narrative documentaries called La Union Long Time is made up of local talent. We are still in a pandemic, and we live not just in a world that has changed, but in a neighborhood that has evolved. Rural migration away from urban centers like Metro Manila has made the small surf town district around San Juan La Union more of a melting pot than it ever has been, at least as far as I can remember. Alongside the international surf veterans and local surf pioneers we mentioned at the beginning of this talk, we have a growing community of entrepreneurs, creatives, and digital nomads who work from here, wherever here may be. And fortunately, here includes the neighborhood around Mona Lisa Point, this barangay Orbistondo, and this property called Great Northwest. As the world tries to imagine life after this pandemic, I believe that many of the answers lie in small neighborhood communities and how they think and operate. Circular thinking, or donut economics, a term made popular by the economist Kate Rayworth, turns our vision inward, using locally available materials, sourcing raw ingredients nearby, working with local talent. In looking into a circle, you also look outward. Digital natives like millennials and those younger than us seek authenticity and off-the-beaten-path experiences and adventures that resort thinking simply cannot provide. On the other hand, and in contrast, neighborhoods are what our generation will travel to experience. And the character and texture of lived spaces is what turns those spaces into place. That is what we are experiencing here in our corner of the Great Northwest Philippines, in the surf town of La Union, in Barangay Orbistondo. Our story is but one of many, and there are many more stories in town that we could never cover in just one talk. So a fitting end to this quick keynote is an invitation. We hope you will come and experience our neighborhood in La Union the next time you get to travel. We'd love for you to enjoy the Great Northwest with us.